Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Good Reasons series with Pastor Kurt. Today's question we're going to try to answer was, Adam a real person? So when you open Genesis, it says God created the first man, Adam. But today, many people argue that Adam wasn't real. They say he was symbolic, a story used to explain humanity. But why? Because modern evolutionary theory claims that humanity developed gradually from earlier life forms over long periods of time through random mutation and natural selection. If that's true, then humanity didn't begin with one original pair. It began with a population of creatures that were human adjacent, perhaps. So the real question becomes, does science actually require us to reject a historical Adam? I argue that it does not. Let's walk through why. First, consider the idea of neo-Darwinism. Neo-Darwinism says random mutations filtered by natural selection explain the diversity and complexity of life. But there's a growing challenge here. Natural selection can explain variations within an ecosystem. It can explain why some traits survive and others don't. But explaining small variations is different from explaining the origin of complex biological information in the first place. The structure of life, down to the cellular level, is highly ordered and patterned. The question isn't just how traits change. The question is how complex biological information originates. Where did it come from? And that remains a point of tension. Second, we have to consider population genetics. One major objection to Adam is this. There's too much genetic diversity in the human population for us to have come from just two people. That argument depends heavily on assumptions about mutation rates and very long evolutionary timescales. But when mutation rates are measured empirically, rather than assumed across deep time, millions of years, the model looks very different. Additionally, mitochondrial DNA and Y chromosomal inheritance shows that humanity traces back to a single maternal and paternal line at the genetic level. Some have even argued that line is produced around 6,000 years ago. Now, that doesn't prove Adam, but it does mean that genetic evidence does not rule out a historical ancestral pair. It means the deep time model is not as fixed or assumption-free as it is often presented. It uses a lot of assumptions to draw its conclusions. So third, let's consider anthropology. When we look at the fossil record in early human history, we see something interesting. Anatomically modern humans appear before what we call behavioral modernity. But fully developed symbolic behavior, language capacity, moral awareness, and abstract reasoning appear suddenly in the archaeological record. They appear together, not gradually, but as a coherent package. And that raises a question, why does human behavior emerge abruptly rather than incrementally? If humanity were gradually evolving cognitively, we would expect a clear transitional trail. Instead, we see a sharp distinction between anatomically similar and uniquely human behavior. Anatomically similar creatures, but uniquely human behavior were distinct. There's a sharp distinction, and that matters because Genesis does not really describe a biological organism. It describes a human being endowed with moral agency and image-bearing status. So anthropology itself distinguishes between anatomical form and behavior identity. So the existence of hominin creatures that were biologically similar to humans does not undermine the claim that Adam was the first true human in the covenantal and moral sense. So where does that leave us? I do not claim that science proves Adam, but it does demonstrate something important. Rejecting a historical Adam is not required by empirical evidence. Neo-Darwinism struggles to explain the origin of complex biological information. Population genetics relies on assumption-laden timelines. Genetic inheritance patterns do not eliminate the possibility of a single ancestral pair, and anthropology reveals a sudden emergence of unique human behavior. When evaluated together, these disciplines do not force reinterpretation of Genesis. They allow for and are consistent with a historical Adam. And that means the biblical account of humanity's origin remains significantly and anthropologically credible.
Thank you for watching Good Reasons with Pastor Kurt. Until next time.